Hello everybody, this is John. Welcome to the NCGA Mershman Seeds Ag Weather Outlook for July 1st, 2017. You know, the upper Midwest, primarily North Dakota, the far north and western Corn Belt, has been unusually dry and just been no relief in the past month or so. I'm also seeing more variability this season than I saw last season. We are heading into that hottest time of year, so it's going to be very critical where we stand right now as far as soil moisture. So let's look at the past month of June where the rain fell. And generally, the areas in red are where the most rain fell, over 5 inches. I did get a report from one of my viewers in Ohio stating that he had 6 inches of rain in one day. So lots of rain, or at least ample rain, over Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, scattered parts of northern Missouri. But look at this variability. Here in central Illinois, not much at all, about a ½ inch to an inch. Right here in northern Missouri, over 5 inches and maybe even nearing 10 inches in a few spots. So very much a variable type weather pattern during the month of June. Now, I also had another report from Nebraska saying how dry it was in Nebraska, and here's another area here of under generally an inch or an inch and a half of rain for the entire month. Further to the north, there was some rain over the parts of the Dakotas that were quite dry later in the month, and you can see that we did get some needed rain in this area. So very much a variable type precipitation pattern. So when we look at the percent of normal, areas in blue received a surplus of rain, areas of yellow and red, especially the red, a deficit. So when we're looking at just sort of the big picture here, take a look at scattered areas of North and South Dakota, southern Minnesota, parts of Nebraska, parts of Iowa, parts of Illinois need some additional rainfall. Now, Wisconsin and the eastern Corn Belt's doing pretty good, as well as northern Missouri. But really those darker shades, Nebraska, southeast, parts of South Dakota, and then a part of Iowa now is also quite dry. Then as we get into Kansas and Nebraska, or Kansas and Oklahoma, again, quite dry. Okay, so precipitation last week, parts of northern Missouri got most of the rain in that monthly total came over the last week. You can see there where the heaviest rain fell. Over Indiana, Ohio, you can see 2 inches or more of rain fell over the last week in scattered areas elsewhere. Not nearly as much over Illinois, not nearly as much over parts of the western Corn Belt. So when we look at the U.S. drought monitor here, you can see that we do have areas here of a very intense drought over the western parts of the Corn Belt. Remember I told you these dots, I thought these would start to expand? Well, you can see they're beginning to expand here. So we do need some additional rain to keep us from getting into too much out of the normal range heading into the hottest months. So keep that in mind. With the exception of northern Missouri and the eastern Corn Belt and Wisconsin, pretty much everywhere else could use additional rain. Now we have a big type pattern that's going to set up here and continue into the middle part of July. And this is going to be dominated by a fairly high amplified flow. And the predominant pattern is going to be a ridge of high pressure over the western U.S. and the Intermountain region, and eventually pushing into the Great Plains. That's that dashed purple line. So when we look at temperatures associated with this for the first 5 days, you can see that we have unusually hot weather over the western half of the nation, and over most of the Corn Belt, fairly close to normal temperatures, either a little bit above or a little bit below normal. Precipitation this week, well, I wish some of this would have pushed up a little bit more into Iowa. Looks like it's going to be primarily south of Iowa, so that's not going to help a whole lot. Parts of Missouri needed rain. Parts of Illinois, probably Illinois will be the biggest winner this week. That's where we need the most rain. Eastern Corn Belt's going to keep that in good shape as far as rainfall, but again, the areas that need the rain the most, some of the areas just aren't going to get that rain this week. Some other areas will. So it's one of these sort of, some areas pretty good, other areas not quite as good. And you can see it's going to be caused by this frontal boundary that's going to sort of sag down in this region and produce 2 or 3 days of scattered precipitation. Now, I did want to look at one of the latest models here, and there is some hope for some rain in Iowa. This is through the 16th, and this shows you where the most rain, these are the lighter colors of sort of a purple here, where there could be the most rain, and this looks like the next 10 days. So Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and then perhaps up into Iowa and over towards Ohio over the next 10 days. Now, if we get into the 6 to 10 day period, well, the story is still that ridge of high pressure right smack over the Rockies, and that's going to mean really hot, unusually hot temperatures over the western U.S., primarily over the northwest and north central U.S. Now, the eastern Corn Belt, near normal, we're going to be mainly experiencing that dip in the jet stream, and then a transition as we get into the central part of the Corn Belt, more of a bit above normal temperatures, and then we get up into the western Corn Belt and well above normal temperatures. So what happens during the days 11 to 15, and this is actually July 11th through 16th. I got to remember to change that date. The ridge of high pressure right now is forecast to push a little bit further to the east. Now it pushes out of the Rockies into the Great Plains, and you can see where those high temperatures, unusually high temperatures, and we're looking at 8 to 10 degrees, maybe even more above normal during a hot time of the year. Now over the Dakotas, Nebraska, and even parts of Minnesota. Now if we go further to the east, eastern Corn Belt, near normal temperatures. So gradually pushing off to the east, the hottest temperatures. Okay, so that was temperatures. And in summary for temperatures, the eastern Corn Belt is going to be dominated by that dip in the jet stream, so near normal temperatures, maybe even a little bit below if we have rain and clouds. Over the western Corn Belt, we're going to have that unusually hot weather gradually be inching in as we work our way into July. So here's precipitation, week 1. I sort of mentioned where the precipitation would be. Almost all these areas, with the exception of northern Missouri, could use additional rain. Week 2, at least right now, the models are showing a very dry period on week 2. Soil moisture change, well, we'll see how this works out because I do think we're in a scattered pattern, but it does show the areas in blue is somewhat of a modest increase in soil moisture due to the rainfall over the next week, primarily over the next 2 to 3 days. I thought it'd be interesting to look at weeks 3 and 4 just to get an idea of what might occur. And you can see for weeks 3 to 4, they keep this hot temperature over the western U.S. It's saying that ridge of high pressure is continuing. It's not necessarily pushing further to east. So I've been talking about it sort of pushing in this region. You might wonder if it's going to push further east. Well, at least this outlook is not saying it will. Unfortunately, it looks like below normal precipitation over areas very dry. So parts of North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, it looks like that area, not a whole lot of relief and probably getting deteriorating conditions. I know many people have signed up for the Weather Decisions Planner. Here's that URL again. You can write it down, and I will be advertising this as my posts I put out throughout the week, so you should have a copy of that in my posts as they go out. So the big story will be high heat building into the western Corn Belt as we go into the month of July. Won't necessarily be this week, but it will be building as we go in the next several weeks. Some rain will be in the central and eastern Corn Belt this week, not as much in the north and west, and the hottest temperatures holding west this week, but gradually working to the east on week 2. So that's the weather story. If you have any questions, you can always email me, and I hope you have a great week as we head into the month of July.